cue the music. It is my top 10 books I read in 2023. Yay! Alright, so there's no music. I don't even know why I said that. Guess I just thought it would be funny. And I'm Jason White. This is Jason's Weird Reads. And today I am going to be doing my top 10 list of favorite reads for 2023. And I should put out there that this isn't necessarily a list of books that I read that were released in 2023. Some of these books, I believe, were released in 2023, but it's just my favorites that I read. And this will be the only top 10 list I have. There's a couple more rules I want to mention here. First, I don't add rereads to my top 10 lists, my top 10 books read for any year. I don't add collections of short stories or poetry, and no nonfiction. This is all fiction, novels or novellas, or even novelettes, but no collections or anything like that. So this year was kind of weird in that I thought the whole way through, I thought I was having a kick-ass year. Every time I finished a book I really liked, I was like, man, this year is so good. This year is so good. And I wasn't wrong necessarily, but when I went through the list, I thought I was going to have a difficult time making the list. In completely the opposite way, it was actually difficult to make the list. I thought I'd have too many good books to put in this list, and it turned out I was kind of scraping the barrel in a sense, but not completely. I think maybe I was just in a bad mood when I first opened the list to compile this top 10 list. But, you know, all in all, these I thought about this a lot. I've thought about this list a lot, and there it is tiered, and I am happy with the results. There's another strange thing, is that I read 2 Grady Hendrix books, and not one of them made this top 10 list. That's weird, because every time I've read Grady Hendrix, he ended up in the list. So I thought I was going to have to battle, but no, he didn't make the list. Although there are honorable mentions, and both Grady Hendrix books that I read, which was How to Sell a Haunted House and My Best Friend's Exorcism. Both those books I want to give honorable mentions to. I really enjoyed both of them. I think, my Best Friend's Exorcism more than How to Sell a Haunted House, but I really enjoyed How to Sell a Haunted House as well. The problem with How to Sell a Haunted House for me was mostly the second half. Once we got to the dolls, the possessed dolls, I kind of lost interest, honestly. I really enjoyed the banter between the two, the sister and the brother, and as they were trying to figure out what they were doing with their recently deceased parents' estate, and they things get a little. It was entertaining. Let's just say that they get a little evil with each other, and that was a lot of fun to watch. And then the supernatural stuff kind of kicked in, and it just kind of took me out of that story. But I still enjoyed it overall. And My Best Friend's Exorcism was really great. It was a lot of fun. But I just found that I read a lot better than those books. I'd also like to mention The Bloody Tracks of Bigfoot by David Irons and Devolution by Max Brooks. Both these books I read for the Cryptid Readathon that we held in November. And although I really enjoyed both these books, The Bloody Tracks of Bigfoot, that book itself was the reason why I wanted to do or create the readathon in the first place, because it was a lot of fun. And the first kill in that book is one of the goriest things I think I've ever read, and it made me go, like it was, the whole book itself was awesome, but it just didn't make the list. Same with Devolution. I really enjoyed that. It was, I guess, a more serious look at Bigfoot, and I still really enjoyed it, but I don't know, parts of it just kind of fell flat for me, especially the beginning. I really kind of complained about the beginning, but it is a really good book, and I highly recommend it. It's an honorable mention, and There's a couple more here. All Hallows by Christopher Golden. I really enjoyed this. There's another sort of like family drama going on at the heart of this story that was very entertaining to watch, but it just wasn't strong enough, in my opinion, of course. Like, this is my list. Everyone has their own lists. It wasn't strong enough to make the list fully, but I definitely wanted to give it an honorable mention. And finally, last honorable mention for 2023 is The Sisters of the Vast Black by Lena Rather. This was highly entertaining. I mean, it was like a giant slug for a spaceship in space that travels through space. It was just wild. And this one I struggled the most. This one I think was on the list for a little while as I tinkered with it, but it ended up ultimately being an honorable mention. But it's close. It's so close it could definitely be like number 11. Alright, let's get into the list. And like I said, it is tiered, and I struggled with this list a little bit, but as I said, not in the way I thought I would, but this is the definitive 2023 top reads that I read. So in at number 10, I have Reluctant Immortals by Gwendolyn Keist. This book is a sort of Dracula in the 70s. Yes, Dracula in the 1970s, late 60s, actually early 70s, somewhere in that area. So with Reluctant Immortals, Lucy is trying to... she's defeated Dracula, and he's been split up into a bunch of different piles of ashes that she keeps in urns. And she has spread them out throughout California, or at least LA. And of course, you have Renfield, who's Dracula's sort of reluctant slave in a sense, his servant, and he's trying to get Dracula back alive because that's what even though Dracula split up into ashes, like many different piles of ashes and spread out through the city, he's still very powerful. At least he is with Renfield, and you can still sort of communicate in a sense. And he wants to be back alive, and he's using Renfield to do it, and other people as we go along. And so slowly, Lucy is losing these urns, and Dracula is slowly coming back. And the reason why she's keeping Dracula imprisoned in this way is because when he's alive, he does nothing but torment and abuse her. He likes to kill her over and over again because she can't ultimately die. And so she's always being killed and then coming back to life. I mean, he's just absolutely horrible to her. And so it makes perfect sense that she would want to do this. And he's also very controlling. He's just like that abusive boyfriend that you can't get rid of. And that's pretty much what this story is about. It takes on women's rights in a fun sort of way. And it's a great story. It was a lot of fun. Moving on, at number 9, we have The House on Abigail Lane by Keelan Patrick Burke. This book I didn't think I was going to enjoy. The first little bit, I thought it was going in a completely different direction, but once I realized the direction it was going in, I was like, wow, this book is fantastic, and it's right up my alley. It definitely is up my alley because I like unexplained disappearances of people. And this book is pretty much, that's what this book is about. Even it's about a house, a haunted house, and even while the house was being built, people disappeared. And we go into detail as to all the disappearances and what exactly is going on. This book is written as though it's like an article or maybe a book, a nonfiction book about the place. And so there's no necessarily main characters, but you have characters that kind of come and go. It's a fascinating read, and I absolutely loved it. So that is number 9, The House on Abigail Lane by Keelan Patrick Burke. At number 8, I have Dead End by Robbie Dorman. Now, this is a book that I predicted was going to make at least number 2 on this list. But for some reason, at the end of the day, I was just like, you know what? It needs to go down a little bit because just all the other books are so good. And I read a lot of these books after reading Dead End, but Dead End really means a lot to me. And you know what? It is definitely a contender for like a number 2 spot, number 3 spot. I really enjoyed the concept behind the story of evil corporation taking complete and utter advantage of their employees, as some people do in this day and age, Amazon. I really enjoyed this story. It's about a young man who's struggling not only to get a job, but to keep a job, because he does have some anger issues, but his anger is generally, you know, on the I guess the correct side. He sees through the crap that you're fed when you get a new job sometimes. So, you know, we're all a family, and we all work for, you know, the betterment of the company and all that kind of stuff that sometimes you're spoon-fed. Especially when it comes to like factory work or warehouse work, like where this story takes place. And so he gets a new job. His ex-girlfriend, of whom he's living with, he sleeps on her couch. He gets a new job. She helps him find this new job, and it's with a company it's basically an Amazon type of store. I think he called it Nerf in Dead End, something like that anyway. And he learns pretty quickly just how evil this place is and what they are doing behind closed doors. He applies for like an advancement up into the secrets type of job, and he learns exactly what's going on there, and I'm going to leave it at that. It's a really fascinating read. I absolutely loved it, and I'm looking so much more to reading more Robbie Dorman in 2024. Next up, I have The Har by David Sodergren. This book is absolutely fascinating. It's fascinating for a couple of reasons. One reason is because it's about an old lady, and I think David Sodergren really did a good job at portraying an old lady. And it's about, again, an evil corporation who's moving in to build a golf course, and they're buying out all the property where they want to build this golf course. The main character, the old lady, I can't remember her name, she is one of the people they're trying to buy the property from, but she doesn't want to move. She's lived there her entire life. And so this corporation sort of resorts to very unconventional, very illegal actions in order to get the people who are refusing to buy or to sell their land. And one day, while she's going through this turmoil that this company is putting her through, she finds this creature that is washed up on the shore. And this creature starts to help her. I'm going to leave it at that. This book is awesome, and I can't recommend it enough, as with all these books. Next up at number 6 here, I have Transmuted by Eve Harms. This book was an insane hoot. I mean, the first half of this book is perfectly normal. It's a good story about a young trans woman who has gone through the transformation, but now she's not happy with her face. It's too manly, and so she's looking for alternatives to get, you know, a feminine face. And she comes across this ad, I believe on Facebook too, that of this experimental treatment that can make you look more feminine if you're going through the transformation. And so she decides to go for it, and what she ends up with is a mad scientist like doctor who's doing horrible things to his subjects, and you see just how horrible everything is once she starts going through that transformation. It's a brilliant story, and I think it's very important. It's a very important story for our current times. I think a lot of people should read this book. Next up, I have number 5, Below by Laurel Hightower. Now, this book is kind of funny because for some reason I forgot I read it in 2023. I thought I read it in 2022 for the longest time. It was weird until I went over my list and I was like, oh, Below is on this list. And I thought, I don't know, man, aging is a weird thing. I thought that Below had made my list somewhere last year, my top 10 list. What is memory, honestly? Like, anyways, so Below by Laurel Hightower is number 4. It is about a young woman who wants to go and hang out with her friends at like this horror convention. They're going to be drinking and watching horror movies and staying in a hotel. So she's on her way there, but a massive snowstorm comes, and she's kind of timid about driving in the first place. So she stops off at this truck stop, and there's a trucker there, and he can tell that she's kind of nervous. So he comes over. He's like, I don't want to harm you, and I don't want to make you paranoid, but in any way. But if you want help getting to where you're going, because we're going close to the same place, if you want help, here's a little CB radio, and you can follow me in the truck. And if you run into any issues, just radio me, and we'll figure it out. So she takes him up on it, and as she's following him down the road, the storm hits, and it's a wicked storm. His truck jackknifes in the middle of a bridge, of all places, and the truck goes over the side of the bridge. Now she's stuck with the idea, what should she do? Should she go help this complete stranger? I mean, it's a deep ravine. It's like rocky and everything. Does she go help him, or does she just, call for help and wait for them to arrive? And I'm going to leave it at that. You can figure out what she decides to do when you read this book. She should read this book. It's awesome. And it's a lot of fun, honestly. And there's like this Mothman-like creature in it. And that's, once the accident happens, that's where all the strange, weird monster type stuff starts to happen. And this book is creepy. It is absolutely creepy. There's parts about this book that really creep me out. I love it. Highly recommend it. All right, next up, I have Mary by Nat Cassidy. This book, a lot of people have been praising, and I can see why. It's a lot of fun. And it was interesting while I was reading it, because I went through periods where I was like, I figured this out. I don't like it. I think I'm going to DNF it. And then something else would happen. I'm like, oh. And then, that only happened actually at the beginning. But it was like a roller coaster ride of me enjoying it versus me questioning it. And ultimately it led into a place that was just, I felt kind of phenomenal. And I absolutely love this story. Mary is about a middle-aged woman who just lost her job. And that firing scene happens like in the first chapter, and it's kind of sad. And you can just picture something like that happening. Anyway, she doesn't know what to do, and her aunt phones her, and she says, she's got a terminal illness and that she needs to come and help take care of her. And so she decides to go take care of her, and while she's there, she learns about who she is. I mean, really who she is, because strange things starts to happen. Strange things started to happen before she moves in with her aunt. Like, when she looks at a woman's face, all she sees is it rotting. And she sees that in the mirror as well. And she also sees visions of women with pillowcases over their heads. Something weird is going on, and she learns what the truth is, and the truth is something about herself that she never suspected. This book is very funny, but it's also very dark. And ultimately, once I was done it, I was like, my God, this book is brilliant. I absolutely loved it. And so I knew once I was done, it was going to make my top 10 list. I just didn't know where. And I'm not too surprised that it is where it's at right now, which is number 4. And I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't read it. Take the plunge. I think you might enjoy it. Of course, all these books that I say are phenomenal and highly recommended are not everyone's cup of tea. I understand if you don't like it, but I do, and that's why it's here. Next up is number 3, and I have this puppy, Blackmouth by Ronald Malfi. This book is so dark, my God. Okay, so the book starts off kind of dark. I read the first chapter, or not the first chapter, the first sentence recently on a video, and that really sets the tone for the entire book. This book is very dark. It's about a guy, Jamie. Jamie is he's a bit of a chronic alcoholic, and to say a bit of one is an understatement. He doesn't lose his job. He almost loses his job because he works for like a construction company, and he causes an accident at work. And while he wasn't drunk, he probably was like pretty severely hungover, but he smells like alcohol, from the night before. Anyone who's drunk a lot will know what that is. It just stays in your body for a long time, and you're probably still feeling the effects of the alcohol. So they want to fire him, but because of the law or union, the union says you have to send them through rehab for like a month first, or yeah, it's a month, 30 days, and they end up taking them for like 60 days because pretty soon they realize he's got a pretty big problem, so he's going to need extensive care in this regard. So once he gets out, while he's in rehab, his mother dies, and his brother, actually no, I think this happens right after he's released. So right after he's released, he's on like a strict diet of AA meetings every day for pretty much as long as he's employed with that construction company. But during this time, his mother is found dead in their home, and his brother is found wandering around on the road in just his underwear and muttering nonsense. So he has to go back to his hometown to pick up his brother, and it's while he's there and going back home, do all these memories of everything that's fucked him up, basically, come back. And part of the memories is this magician that came along with a carnival, who he and his friends used to play with in the woods. And if that sounds sinister, you're right, it's very sinister. This book goes to some very dark places, but it's dark places that you're not expecting. I mean, there's a chapter near the end that just like where'd that come from? I was just like, holy cow. Jamie is one of the most interesting characters I've read in a very long time, because there's so much going on with him and so many things that could definitely mess up a person and their life, and you don't know how he didn't come through with this alive, never mind being a severe alcoholic. So definitely recommend this book. Had I not read the next two books, this would have easily been number 1, but it's at number 3. Definitely read this book. This made me an instant Ronald Malfi fan. All right, in at number 2, I read this book earlier on in the year. It was like last winter, before winter ended in 2023. I was reading this book, and it's Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This book made me fall in love with science fiction. I love science, and I love learning about space. I'm learning about space all the time, but for some reason there's a disconnect with me in regards to science fiction. Science fiction, for some reason, books just don't... I don't know why. I want to like science fiction more than I do. But this book really hit home because the science felt real. But it wasn't just the science that landed home for me. Because even when the science didn't seem to make sense or didn't seem realistic, I was okay with that. Because the story was so good. I don't want to explain the plot for this too much, because it'll ruin it. I think you really have to go into this as blind as possible in order to enjoy Hail Mary as much as possible. But I'll give you the premise. An astronaut, or so we think, an astronaut, he wakes up and his crew is dead. They're in their they're all in the medical bay, I believe, and they're on tables, and he's alive, but they are not. And he has amnesia. He can't remember what the hell happened, or even who he is, but he has to figure out exactly what's going on and why is everyone dead. And as he goes through the ship, he starts learning things, and he learns where he is and what's going on, what the mission is. And let's leave it at that. It's a very fun read. Absolutely adore this book. I want to reread it sometime soon, because it's just it's a blast. It's an absolute blast. It definitely won't have the same. I won't have the same reaction to it on a reread, but I want to revisit it anyway, but I wish, this is one book I wish I could reread for the first time again, because it was a wild ride. Okay, finally, in at number 1. I have to wet my throat for this one. All right. In at number 1. I just read this within a month, or about a month ago, within a month, and it blew me away. And I feel like this book is really important. It's an important part of America history, but it also reflects Canadian history and many other countries' histories. It's things that are not necessarily taught in schools, but should be taught in schools. And of course, I'm talking about the Reformatory. by Tananarive Due. I keep talking, when I talk about this book, 'cause I've talked about it a lot, so I'm going to try not to talk about it too much here, but I keep going on about Robbie's journey. I don't talk too much about Julie, is it Julia? Julia's journey, the sister. So this book is about a brother and a sister, and the little brother, he's 12. He ends up going to the Reformatory for defending his sister after the richest kid in town hits on her, and he's implying things, right? And of course Robbie doesn't like this, and so he gets into this rich kid's face and says, hey, leave her alone, she's not interested in you. So the rich kid pushes him, and Robbie ends up kicking him. Now the father, who's like a landowner, you don't do that if you're colored, to the landowners in Florida in 1950 at that. The father sees it happen, and so the very next day Robbie's picked up and he's taken to court the very next day, and he's sentenced right there, 6 months at the Reformatory School for Boys. Now this is based on the Dozier School for Boys, which was a real place. You can look it up, and there's a documentary that it talks about it on Netflix. I forget the name of that documentary, but it's definitely, you can go check it out. I always talked about Robbie's journey because I would say his journey in the Reformatory affected me the most. It made me think of my own son, who I would say has a similar disposition to Robbie. I think a lot of kids who aren't bad kids, who are good kids, who are innocent, and it was hard to watch Robbie go through the loss of his innocence as he goes into this terrible place. But I didn't talk about Julie's I can't remember if her name is Julie or Julia. Anyways, her journey very much, because she's on the outside, and she's only 16 years old, but she's like rounding up the troops. Basically, she's trying to get them out, and their dad is a lawyer, and Gloria is trying to she's trying to get lawyers who can help get Robbie out, because he didn't do anything that should have sent him to the Reformatory in the first place. And so her battle to do this and to get it done is quite striking itself. And there's also, I talk about when Robbie goes to the fun house where the beatings really occur, how much that broke me. There's another tense part involving Gloria that had me intense. Like, it was very intense. This scene had me like, I was like, glued to the story. And it involves when Gloria and her caretaker, who is another colored woman, they go down to visit with Robbie at the Reformatory, and on the way back they get pulled over by a cop. Now again, this is 1950 Florida, so it's not going to go well, and it almost really doesn't go well at all. It almost goes into some different territory, and it would have been interesting had it gone that way, but thankfully it didn't. You need to read the book in order to know what I'm talking about, but this book is intense. It's very important because, like I said, it talks about a history that some people want to forget, and you can't forget the things that we've done in order to not repeat the same thing over and over again. What it comes down to, basically, is we don't need to be treating each other this way at all. If we could just learn to live and let go of the things that we want the most, especially when it comes to the way other people's live. I'm totally off base here, but basically I just don't think we don't need to do these types of things, especially to children. Alright, so that is my top 10 list. Tell me what your favorite reads were of 2023, deep down there in the darkness. And I hope you enjoyed your time. If you did enjoy your time, please leave me a stack of books in the darkness down there, and I'll leave you some books in return. Alright, my weird friends, thank you for watching. Keep being creative and keep being safe, and I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.